So Aston Villa easily dispatched of Burnley on Sunday. Villa came away 3-1 winners against the Clarets away at Turf Moor, picking up their first away victory of the season as well. And the way Villa played, they tried something a bit new, a different formation, and Burnley just really couldn't handle it. Villa playing some scintillating stuff, especially in the first half, putting in a near faultless performance really. Conceding early in the second half through a bit of a lapse of concentration, but went on to see the game out really comfortably. And Emery's team are just looking really impressive at the moment, and despite the first game loss on the opening day against Newcastle, it's still looking like a really promising season for Villa, and being in the Conference League as well, they can do some really exciting things. So let's get into the game against Burnley. We're going to break it down a little bit, see what Villa did differently and how it really worked, and how they really found a lot of joy getting in behind Burnley, especially in the wide areas. So let's dive into it. Let's take a look at how Villa lined up first. So they started with, it was more of a three at the back most of the game, which Emery hasn't really done at Villa yet. They started with Carlos, Concert and Pau Torres at the back. Pau Torres obviously been forced into the side probably a little bit earlier than Emery would have liked, but he looked really comfortable. He did really well, and he's worked with Emery a lot, and he's a player that really suits UNAI's style, and I can see him being really important for the side going forward for the rest of the season once he's more embedded in the side and knows how to play with the players alongside him a lot more as well. So they started with that back three, the usual of Luiz and Kamara in midfield, and then McGinn sort of part of the front three with Watkins and Diaby. Played mostly just off that left-hand side, linking up with Luca Digne on the left, who had a lot of space throughout the game. Over on the other side, Diaby was linking up with Cash a lot. Obviously, Cash scored 2 goals and looked really, really promising. Sort of a throwback to his Forest days where he played more as a right winger, a right midfielder, and he had loads of freedom to go and do that and push forward, get into the box, get into goal scoring opportunities in this game as well. So that could be something that Villa fans could be really excited for as well, going forward in the rest of the season. But let's have a look, because this game was really Emery ball in one of its purest forms really. Starting from the back, obviously he likes to play a very patient build-up, trying to bait the press of Burnley, and that really worked in Villa's favour on Sunday. So the likes of Amdouni, for example, and Foster would come and try and close the centre-backs down. Didn't get too close, so they still had time to play the passes. And what was really clever, especially in the second goal, the movement of Luiz and Kamara, moving their midfield markers out of the way to create that passing lane. Let's get a ball involved here. To create that passing lane through to Watkins, who could then either turn on the pivot or lay it off to the likes of Luiz, Kamara, Diaby, and they can push on and exploit the wide areas from there. And that's where they really had a lot of joy throughout the game. As you can see, Matty Cash, the right wing back, got the first 2 goals. The third goal came from a Luca Digne cross, and he had acres of space throughout the game. And those overloads down the left and the right hand side were where Villa could really exploit Burnley, and Burnley didn't really know how to deal with it. The likes of Connor Roberts, Alderkill at centre back and Lacroix just didn't know who to pick up, and they couldn't follow the overload of players in those areas. So if we look particularly, we'll look at the first goal. So as you can see, Ollie Watkins drops a bit deeper here with Burnley's high line. He drags them forward, higher up the pitch, receives the ball into feet, lays it off to, I think it was McGinn, could be wrong, but I think it was McGinn, and then is able to spin in behind. Alderkill can't get near him, gets dragged in way too tight to Watkins and doesn't have the time or the space to get back and follow him. And a little ball over the top, Watkins with a bit of a heavy touch, and Matty Cash just purely beats Lacroix to the back post. Has a simple tap in at the back post. Watkins does well to get to his heavy touch, in all fairness. O'Shea, I think, is following Diaby as well, or one of the other attackers. And then you go, there's instantly loads of space in behind due to that Burnley high line and due to the movement of the likes of Watkins coming deeper to pick up the ball and allowing that space in behind the Burnley defence. And then similarly for the second goal, if we just shift the players over to the right, because that's where it came from. As we said earlier, Luiz and Kamara created that space for Watkins, that passing lane that Burnley they didn't close down any of the passing lanes, and there was so much time and space for the likes of Carlos and Concert and Pau Torres to pass into. Carlos passes it into Watkins, draws Alderkill in again, meaning there's space for Diaby and Cash on that right hand side to exploit that space in behind the defence. And Lacroix and O'Shea just don't know who to pick up. Diaby gets away, creating the space for Cash. He comes inside, Diaby goes around on the outside, plays it into Cash, and Cash can just fire it home. And Alderkill isn't anywhere to be seen because, again, he gets sucked in way too close to Ollie Watkins and he can't get back quick enough to cover the space where Cash is running into. Burnley just couldn't deal with it, particularly with the way they want their centre-backs and full-backs to play. We'll highlight Connor Roberts for a second. We'll have a look at some of his stats in a minute. The way that the company wants Burnley to play, Connor Roberts, and he did this a lot in the Championship, plays sort of as an inverted full-back. So if we look at his heat map, he gets forward quite a lot and is found on the opposite side of the pitch to where he was positioned at right back. There's a real hot spot on that left-hand side higher up the pitch where he was for most of the game, but that just meant that Luca Digne has so much space on that left-hand side, and you can see in the first 2 goals, even though he wasn't directly involved in those, he's busting a gut to get forward to that back post. Mainly the second goal, to be honest with you. But he's busting a gut, has so much space because Connor Roberts just gets sucked in and loses his man, doesn't look around, doesn't know where he is. And if for whatever reason Cash hadn't finished off the 2 chances or Villa weren't able to successfully get in behind that right hand side, Luca Digne is absolutely acres of space down that left hand side, and it's really dangerous. And it finally does come off in the 3rd goal. So if we look at the 3rd goal later on in the second half, McGinn comes deeper to pick up the ball. We'll get the ball back in play here. Comes deeper to pick up the ball around the centre of the park on the transition. Alderkill again, he had a really poor game in all honesty. Just didn't know what to do, didn't know how tight to get to these players, ended up getting way too tight for all of the goals. McGinn does what he does best with this big juicy blunder, spins Alderkill on the pivot, has so much space to run into, so much space. Alderkill can't recover, he does foul him, but of course advantage is played to Villa's joy. Plays in Digne in behind, and Digne has a great ball. He has a great ball on him. We all know this from his time at Everton, Rome and Barcelona, and he's really grown into a Villa shirt. It's taken a bit of time, but he's finally getting there. Got 3 assists in midweek against Hibernian as well, with his absolute wand of a left foot. Absolutely brilliant. And then O'Shea, Lacroix, and it was another defender, I can't quite remember who, but they're sprinting back into the box to cover there. Completely lose Diaby, who blindsides them, pulls back to the edge of the box, and his movement was absolutely brilliant throughout the whole game. Pulls back to the edge of the box, no one around him, and is able to just slot it into the bottom corner there. If you touch on Diaby quickly as well, he is absolutely brilliant. I can perfectly see why Emery brought him in. He's exactly what Villa needs, especially alongside Watkins. He's brought a real refreshment to the Villa attack. He's got a lot of pace, which Villa kind of missed out on in the past few seasons. And his movement is so clever. The way he interchanges with Cash for the first couple of goals, or for the second goal, sorry. And then the way he just pulls off the defence for the final goal. He was absolutely brilliant. Picked up 2 key passes as well, 2 big chances. Creative two big chances, sorry. Obviously scored, got an assist for Matty Cash's second goal. And looked really exciting. Back-to-back goals in away games as well, because he scored on the opening day against Newcastle, and he's someone that fans can really look forward to watching flourish for the rest of the season. Someone for the FPL teams as well. I think he's going to pick up some good numbers this year. And as we can see, that the way that Emery wanted to play really worked, particularly with the playing out from the back. We have Carlos, Torres and Konsa all picking up really good stats for passes into the final third, those progressive passes. You got Konsa with 4, Carlos with 3, Pau Torres with 2, showing that they really want to build up from the back, build up in those central areas, drag the defenders the inside of the pitch, and exploit those wide spaces where Burnley were really vulnerable. If you just take a look at the average positions as well, you can see with the Villa attack that Diaby and Cash are really close together, and Luca Digne and John McGinn are really high up as well, showing that they really wanted to double up on the Burnley wide areas. And then if you switch to Burnley's average positions, Connor Roberts is basically looking like a centre midfielder, and there's just so much room to exploit in the wide areas, and Burnley just really couldn't deal with it. They really couldn't deal with it. And it feels a little bit naive, particularly from the likes of Alderkill, you just can't do that at the top level. You can't make those rash decisions and get drawn in that easily. You've got to be more disciplined, especially against these exciting, quick teams on the transition. But Villa, on the other hand, they can be really excited because this is looking really promising for Emery's Villa now. And it shows that they're getting goals from a range of areas on the pitch. If it wasn't for Cash, they have Diaby. Watkins still hasn't scored in the league, but he got loads of chances on Sunday, which he probably should have put away. James Trafford made a really good save for one of them at point blank range. But Watkins is going to get really good numbers. He did still get an assist. Matty Cash popping up with goals now. Luca Digne getting in loads of space. He was unlucky not to receive the ball more, to be honest, especially in the first half. And then you've got McGinn wanting to get into the box. Zaniolo off the bench as well, actually. I really want to touch on him really quick. He looked really hungry. He looks like he really wanted to impress when he came on. Did get a little bit in the way with some of his runs when he first came on the pitch, when trying to pick up the ball off the likes of Cash and Douglas Luiz. But he really grew into it when he was on the ball, got a really nice nutmeg on one of the Burnley midfielders. Lovely little no-look pass out wide as well. And had that chance early on, getting it in behind the Burnley high line. Probably should have scored, to be honest, but we'll let him off because it was his debut and they're already 3-1 up. But he's someone to be really excited about. He's really good at interlinking play in those forward areas, playing where he likes to on that inside right. That's where he got a lot of his goals for Galatasaray in the second half of last season. And he's really physical as well. He's a big lad, so I think he really suits the Premier League and he can be a really exciting option off the bench. I'd like to see him start a game maybe midweek against Hibs for the second leg, now that Villa are already through. He's someone that I think fans can really look forward to watching. And I'm really looking forward to watching him. I think he's great. And he looks like a really fun player. But I think things are looking really good for Villa at the moment. They'll have a much more tough test next week against Liverpool, but I think they're there for the taking, especially with the red card to Van Dijk, so he's going to be out. Villa can really use that high press and exploit the spaces out wide again. I think if you look at Trent's game against Newcastle last week, obviously he likes to come inside, and when Newcastle did look to go down that left-hand side when they were on the ball, Trent did not look comfortable at all. Anthony Gordon getting the better of him, making a mistake, of course. He doesn't want to show people down the outside. He wants them to come inside because when they go and drive down the outside, he doesn't know what to do. And I think Villa can really use those wide fullbacks, Matty Cash and Luca Digne in that game, and I think that promises to be a really good matchup. And I can see Villa getting at least 1 or 2 goals, to be honest with you. I'll be really surprised if they don't score next week. But it's going to be a really interesting one. It's going to be really interesting to see how this works against the bigger teams, and also how it works against teams that will sit back more, because Burnley, they want to play that higher line. They don't want to be a negative team coming up from the Championship. They want to stick to their principles and the way that they played last year. Obviously storming the league last season, but that just didn't work for them today. It really worked against them, to be honest. And yeah, I think it's a really exciting time for Villa. Emery really knows how to use the players at his disposal. Has had some bad luck with injuries, of course, to Emi Buendia and Tyrone Mings, who look like they'll be out for the majority of the season, if not the whole season. But he's really using these players that he's brought in, like Pau Torres. Obviously, Moreno's out as well, but Luca Digne has looked brilliant in place of him, where last season he looked really shaky. But Emery is someone you can trust, and Villa fans, be excited because this is looking really promising, and Unai Emery's going to do big things for Villa this season. Heard it here first. You definitely didn't hear it here first because people have been saying it all the time, but you know, this just proved it. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed this style of video, breaking down a bit of how teams want to play. I want to do this a little bit more, so let me know what you think in the comments. Please make sure to like and subscribe, really appreciate it. And yeah, let's see how these teams get on for the rest of the season.